All right, so the economic outlook for the country is looking rather gloomy at the moment. We're expecting later this week the Reserve Bank to raise interest rates. So what does that mean as far as the economy is concerned? More importantly, what does it mean for you and I? Well, let's find out as we welcome to the show Economist Joseph Busha, looking ahead at the economy and the economic week ahead. Joseph, good to have you on the show. Nice to have you coming in.
Good morning.
By the way, we were just talking about it off air. It's tricky now with the power cuts, because most people can't do Zooms anymore. There's no connectivity, there's no computers.
Well, it is safer to actually come in because in the middle of any discussions, the electricity can just go off.
It does, yeah.
And we had about, from 6 yesterday to about 4, we had no power in Hyde Park.
And we're hearing now with the stage 6, it's going to stay in place indefinitely. We're going to get there, but I really appreciate you coming in because the economy is not something you want interrupted by bad cell phone signal or bad Wi-Fi signal. I'm seeing 75 basis points pushing it up to 6.25%. What does that actually mean? How did we get to this stage where we're expecting an interest rate hike?
Well, it just means basically more pressure to the consumers, more pressure on the economy. It means then as people try to come back into full swing in terms of economic activity after the COVID disruptions, it means it's going to get more costly for people to borrow money, to start their business, and to do any scaling or expansion. So certainly, I think this does not augur well, but I think the SARB has got no option. They have to catch up with the global economies, as you know, that U.S. has been increasing interest rates quite rapidly. Inflation is very sticky and very high, both in Europe, in particular in the UK and in America. This is where your inflation is at a 40-year high. So that's really massive, and I think South Africa cannot stay behind because we've always been behind the curve in terms of interest rate decisions.
So we've essentially been getting an interest rate holiday up to now. It's always been slightly behind the curve, but at some point we have to pay for the dinner, we have to pay for the lunch, don't we?
100%. For the purchasing power parity, we have to increase rates. Remember, we had very good years in 2006 and I think 2006, 2008 during the banking era, and then it went up again to about 14% at some stage. And then we had a very good long period of low interest rates in SA, again, possibly about 30 years low interest rates. Right now, I think we are on the rising cycle. And I think the Reserve Bank just want to tame inflation by making sure that we don't get overheat or into overdrive. So 75 basis points or 50 basis points would be appropriate on Thursday.
So was there no more wiggle room then, Joseph, for the Reserve Bank to try and stave this off for a little bit later, or was this always going to be inevitable? At some point, the interest rates had to go up because some people are saying, and I see the Daily Maverick using this as a very clever headline, this is a bitter rescue remedy. This was inevitable, wasn't it?
It's inevitable. We have to get it. We have to swallow the bitter pill. I think the sooner the better, rather than delaying it, because it's going to be more painful, I think, for SA, and we might fail to be able to contain runaway inflation, given that Eskom might be asking for about 30% electricity tariff increase. So energy has been a main contributor to inflation, both food inflation, transport inflation, and all, the different types of inflation we have. We're also facing issues with agriculture where we need electricity to go in. I think you've seen that Europe is actually asking people to cut electricity usage by about 10%, and I think going into their winter as well. So I think we're not alone, but I think we have basically made some of our problems worse for ourselves because we knew this is happening. We knew the country was expanding. We knew more people have been moving into towns. We've been trying to industrialize, which the president has been trying to say, let's get black industries and just try and create employment. But I think it was not, getting electricity, in particular, the engineering part of it, to be in line with SA growth expectations.
Let's talk about the stage 6 blackouts for a moment, if we can. We know the president is expected to come back. He says he's cutting his trip short. He was currently in the UK for Queen Elizabeth II's funeral, after that coming home as well. Economically wise, what does an economist do when they look at an outlook and we're dealing with an issue like stage 6? What's the general consensus about the effect blackouts and stage 6, possibly worse, we could go higher stages, have as far as economists are concerned? Is there the proverbial light at the end of the tunnel, or are we really down the rabbit hole now?
We are really down, because I think if you had to look at it in terms of many hours, many work hours lost, as you come to work, you lose time to go to work because you have to, manage the traffic lights, you have to manage the store traffic, and also just the production, because remember, every time there's a cut, okay, the economic cost is huge, because first, you're not producing, and secondly, there's damage to equipment, in particular electronic equipment, and you can't plan. You can't really plan, and this cost of setting up energy, and we're all talking about independent power producers and renewable energy, but just the setup cost is quite significant. So your capex is going to be quite huge in the beginning, and I don't think the rate of us producing new sources of energy or bringing in new sources of energy will be quick enough to be able to avert the economic disaster we are in.
Let me ask you this very briefly. What would help avert this electric disaster that you're referring to? What, to your mind, could be done in the short term, if anything? Last question.
Well, emergency crisis, this is really a national crisis. So the president must declare that this is a national disaster and find ways really to be able to solve Eskom's problems. But even if we have, international guys, energy experts coming through or technicians coming through to try and solve it, because it's not enough to say, it's maintenance, because right now we're going into the rain season and there will be another blame game, where the core is wet, hence Eskom
First it was winter when it was cold, now it's going to be rainy, so the coal is going to be wet. So you're saying it should become a national disaster?
100%. He might actually have to declare it, because this is long, and I think this is the longest in the recent history when we have blackouts that has been extending more than 6 hours and across the country.
I really appreciate your time coming in, Joseph. It's been wonderful to have you in studio for a change as well, in person. It's always nice. Joseph Busha, Economist.